welcome back, everybody. It's time once again to meet our community, the Hispanic business community here in Orange County. Powered by the Orange County Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio. Streaming live from our studios here at the University of California, Irvine's Beale Applied Innovation Center with, I'm going to start calling him, I call him Mr. OC. I think he's Mr. Boxing here now. We got some boxing royalty in the house again.
Yes,
here.
We have another great boxer with us, a local hero in our community, Mr. Ronny Rios, who was born in L.A., but raised in Santa Ana. And not only is he a professional boxer, but he's overall just a good guy, does a lot of good stuff in the community. And we're so excited to have him on our community podcast show, powered by the Orange County Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. I'm your host, John Gutierrez, Senior Vice President. Welcome, Mr. Ronny Rios.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me. Such a pleasure. Such a great vibe here. I really appreciate it, guys.
No, we appreciate having you. I know that you're super busy right now training for probably your next fight.
At the moment, no, because I had suffered an injury 2 weeks ago in my last fight, and right now I'm just taking time with the family. I'm still working out regardless. I can never take more than 3 days off. So you always gotta be a professional, stay in the gym.
Yeah, well, you fought a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks from today.
And you KO'd this gentleman in the 5th round.
Yes, sir.
What was that like? Being back again, right?
It felt so good, man. Taking close to 2 years off, and after suffering so many ups and downs, it's just it messes with you mentally.
Really?
Yeah, it does. It really, to get myself back geared up, it was such a hard obstacle. I would have to say that this sport is 90% mental and 10% physical. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not gonna run, you're not gonna train hard. That's not what I'm saying. But as far as to overcome those mental hurdles, oh man, it's really, really hard.
Really?
Yeah.
I got to tell you, for those of you guys listening, I got to watch Ronny fight in person. How long ago was this fight?
Probably about three and a half, maybe 4 years.
Is that what it was? Yeah. 3.5? And it was at the Stub Hub in the LA area, right?
Yeah.
And I remember going to this fight, and a lot of us from Santa Ana who know Ronny and were there to support him. And you were an underdog, if I'm correct, in that fight.
I think I was like a 4-1, 6-1 underdog.
Yes. And for those of you that don't know, the young man he was fighting was the nephew of Oscar De La Hoya, right?
Yeah.
And which was interesting because you've been involved with Golden Boy Promotion and his whole Oscar De La Hoya group, right, and team. And now here you were fighting somebody in his family, right?
Yeah, it was weird because I remember prior to that we had came back and we had fought at the Forum. That was my comeback fight after the previous loss. So I came back, we scored a TKO win, and then I was at the gym, and then my previous coach was like, "Hey, we got an offer to somebody." And I was like, "Oh, who is it?" He's like, "Oh, Diego De La Hoya." And he's like, "You want to take some time to think about it?" And I was like, "No." I was like, "Tell him, yeah, we accept." So sure enough, we accepted the fight within 5 seconds, and we got ready for that fight, and the results speak for themselves.
I almost feel like they thought you're just going to be a walk on the park.
I do too.
Right?
I think
is that safe to say?
I think so too. I think that was a purpose, and I think they underestimated me, and I think, we trained super hard for it, not just the dedication. It's like I was telling you earlier, a lot of the sport's more mental than physical, in my point of view.
Well, I see you a lot around in the community, and I see you at events, and I remember specifically during that time that when I ran into you before your fight, I remember thinking, wow, I've never seen Ronny this in shape. You were in top-notch shape. Yeah. Like, your skin looked just flawless. You worked really hard to get into shape for that fight. Would you say? Of
course. And it's sometimes working out is probably the best thing, but it's also taking care of yourself too. Rest is important, nutrition is important, rehydration is important. All that has to play key. It's not just you just train. It's also your mindset too. So I would have to say I was 100% for that fight.
Yeah, I remember being at the fight, and there was a lot of people from Santa Ana that we grew up with. One of them being my friend Leo Leon, which you know well, right?
He's actually a close neighbor.
Yes, shout out to Leo, who my brother knows well. Leo was a legend in Santa Ana, basketball player, him and his family. And I remember him being at the fight, and he was down at the bottom at some great seats. And I went down real quick, we talked, and we were all so excited, but also, we were nervous for you. As fans, we're scared for, your safety.
Yeah.
And obviously we want you to be successful and win. But somewhere in the fight, we were just like, are you kidding me? No way. Like this, you were just, you had the eye of the tiger that day.
Yeah.
Something like, hey, I'm not going to be a step over.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be a walk in the park. I'm going to show everybody. And Diego de la Hoya had a big crowd. There was a lot of people that day for him there.
I mean, like I said, he was a favorite. He had at that time, he was undefeated. He had a decent following, like a pretty big following.
He was undefeated?
Yeah, he was undefeated at that time. He was actually, he had just been some former world champions prior to that couple of fights ago. So, yeah, he had a big following that he was going to be the next, they were making him out to be the next world champion.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and then we had sparred like a while back, like I think it was like a year or two, right before I suffered my first loss. We had sparred, so we had only sparred once. I was kind of familiar with the style, and I remember thinking, "Oh, this guy's fast. He puts his punches together." So they put up a great game plan to kind of utilize that, and sure enough, it worked out.
What was your game plan, if you don't mind sharing that?
Just countering. Yeah, it was just to counter because he likes countering. He's a counter puncher. So a counter puncher always wants you to come forward, make mistakes. So we were gonna take that away from him and make him come forward,
Interesting.
Yeah.
So your game plan from your coaches and yourself paid. Did you see that right away in the fight? Could you feel that, okay, this is working?
Yeah, you could.
Yeah.
The thing I remember about that fight, to be honest with you, was just being in the zone. I was always in the zone. I remember, I couldn't hear anything like that much. It was just like, it was kind of like everything was focused on him. Everything else was blurry. That's how I remember that fight.
Wow.
Yeah.
I remember going home and talking to my wife about it, and I was like, honey, he was like Rocky, man. He was the one that they didn't expect to win. I mean, he had a huge crowd. I think they thought it was going to be an easy fight.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way. And here's this kid from Santana.
Yeah.
And you went to the body a lot. I remember.
I still do.
I remember
That's
that.
One of my biggest traits is going to the body.
See, I was watching the fight, you see? I remember you were going to the body a lot because he was a bigger guy.
Yeah. No, he was shorter than I was.
Was he shorter? But
Yeah.
he just seemed like a little bit.
He was a little stockier.
Stockier, right?
Yeah, because he was shorter and he was a little stockier. So, I had to be careful with getting caught with anything dumb,
Yeah. What's it like, Ronnie, when you're in these fights? What's it like as far as, like, if you don't mind me going into the fear of, let's say, your life or something?
Yeah.
Does that cross your mind? Do you just zone all that out? What's that like?
You're never scared to obviously lose your life. At least for me, I always go into a fight, I'm willing to put it all on the line. Whether, because let's be honest, boxing is very dangerous. You hear about people passing away, and I've always told everybody on my team, like, this is something that I chose to do. I'm not being forced to do. So right off the bat, I'm always willing to give it everything I have, And I remember in one fight in particular when I fought Azat, I remember we collided heads, and then after we collided heads, I started getting swelled up, and he continued to hit me. He was landing the harder shots.
Wow.
And my head was throbbing. And I remember the referee came up to me and said, "Hey, Ronnie," he's like, since this is an accidental headbutt, we can go to the scorecards. I can stop the fight. And I was like, "No, man." I was like, I'm going to finish this. I'm going to finish this. So sure enough, he ended up beating me. And a round or two later. And I remember thinking to myself, because when he asked me, "Do you want me to stop the fight?" And I was like, what if something happens to me? I have a wife, I have a kid at that time.
Sure.
One kid. And I was like, what if something happens to me? And I was just like, you know what, man? I was like, I have to go out on my shield. That's just the person I am.
Yeah. I think that's probably, as you get older, the toughest part now that you have family, right? You got children, your wife. It's difficult, right? Some of these decisions become more complicated.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Can we go a little bit into like yourself and just where you were born and where you grew up and how you ended up in boxing? Can we get a little bit into that?
Of course. Okay, so I was born in Martin Luther King Hospital in LA.
Okay.
And we lived in Compton. until I was 4 years old.
Compton, huh?
Yeah, Compton. I still remember.
Now, during the NW days, like everybody would talk about Compton, like those days.
It was like I lived there in 94, from 90 to 94.
So there's some
Yeah.
pretty tough times.
Yeah. I think the riots went on.
Yes.
Yeah. The riots went on. So I remember after my parents got divorced, I was 4 years old. We relocated to Santa Ana off of, if anybody is aware of Santa Ana, Holiday Street.
Okay.
Delhi Park.
Yes, that's right.
That's where we lived for a while, and then we kept bouncing around, but we always kept coming back to Santa Ana, because obviously my grandparents lived there, and I went to Saddleback, I went to McFadden, I went to Monroe, and we always kept coming back to Santa Ana, and it just, to me, that's home. Even though I wasn't born there, I was raised there. I still live there to this day. That's home.
Let me ask you this: growing up as a kid in Santana, especially like in the Delhi area, was it tough? Like, do you remember that maybe boxing played a role in your life?
I wasn't boxing at that time.
No, but were you getting in fights? Like, were you a kid who was just like, "Hey, don't mess with me, man"? Like,
no, not at all, man. So it was actually the opposite.
Really?
So one time, it was my brother and I. We were at Delhi Park, right there by the restrooms.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, I remember there was no handball court at that time because this was a while back. But we were playing on the grass. We were playing soccer. And I remember this guy. He was a notorious guy at that area. I remember he just came up to me and just started beating me up.
Really?
Yeah, but he was older than me by like 5-6 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Literally just picking on you.
Yeah, he literally just beat me up. I remember he knocked me down and he got on top of me, started like punching me.
Wow.
I remember that's my tooth fell out. That's one of the reasons. And then when they grew back out, that's why I have that gap.
Really?
Yeah. And I remember I was just like, damn. But he was all older than me, and for some reason, I had, to this day, I don't know why he decided to lash out on me. But, that still, when that happened, that didn't put fear in me. We still went back to that park. We still walked by that park to go to the liquor store. I still went to school around that park. So, it's like...
It was part of life.
It's part of life. You get knocked down, you get back up. You get hurt, you get back up, To this day, from time to time, I still run around that park. Like, no matter what, I won't change that. Growing up in Santa Ana.
Wow. And do you feel that you get that, if you knock me down, I'm going to get back up from your mom? Is it like, you seen how tough it was for your mom being a single mom raising you guys at a young age or something?
Yeah, I would say so. And then, the thing is, so my mom kind of remarried with my brother's dad, who's Alexis Rocha.
Okay.
He's also a pro fighter, too.
Yes.
Yeah, so she remarried. But the thing is, I wasn't too close to his dad. I used to see him around, but it wasn't like, he wasn't a father figure, He never gave me advice and stuff like that. So I kind of grew up with that. If I would have to say that somebody helped me out growing up, it was probably my uncle, Ramiro Quesada. He's the one that introduced me to boxing.
Really?
Yeah, he's the one. He's been a big fan. So I remember one time my mom took off to Mexico, or so they said. I don't know where they went. They left my brother and I. I think, I don't know if they left Lex or they took Lex, but they left us at my uncle's house. And remember, my uncle was a big boxing fanatic. He used to have KO boxing magazines, The Ring. And I remember I picked one up, and I remember I'm always going to remember the main page, the cover page. It was Shane Mosley versus Sugar Shane Mosley versus Vernon Forrest Part 2. Remember, I was like, damn, those are some cool names. And so I started reading the center page. I started reading the fight. I was like, oh, man. So, and then I started reading about Floyd Mayweather. The very first fight I watched from beginning to end was Floyd Mayweather versus Jose Luis Castillo Part 2. That was the very first fight I saw. And then from then on, I started watching more fights. I started watching Chris Bird. I started watching Sugar Shane Mosley, Oscar De La. I started watching everybody, and then I started looking up the past, and then I really got hooked on boxing. And then I got hooked on boxing. Then I started, then my uncle took us to our very first gym, which is TKO. Yeah, so we showed up and we started training. I started training with my previous coach. I remember when we walked in, there was pictures of the fighters. They were all young and they all had belts, and I was like, oh crap, like damn. I remember I asked him, I was like, oh, what are those belts? Like, oh, national tournaments. I was like, okay, who has the most? He's like, that guy right there. I remember me had like 2 or 3 belts. And I was like, I want to win more belts than that. And he's like, okay, just give it everything. Sure enough, I ended up winning more national titles. I had a pretty decent, extensive amateur career. And then, the rest is just history for me.
Well, TKO Boxing, shout out to them. I know
Mary Lara,
such a nice lady, and just just everybody over there. There's such good people. I know they do so much in the community at the center there. If any of you are watching or listening and you've never heard of TKO Boxing, what's the center that it's under? It's at Jerome Center, right?
Yeah.
If you, Jerome Center does so much in the community, right? If you ever can support what they're doing there, it's just a good place. And I know, of course, you mentioned your brother Alexis Rocha, who has won, right?
Yeah.
Multiple championships, right?
Yeah. He was on some belts too.
Yes.
The amateur and professional rankings too.
Yes, and so it's just beautiful to see that out of this area, out of Santana, out of TKO Boxing, both of you have been able to come out as successful professional athletes. And regardless of records and championships and all of that, which is great, don't get me wrong, I think it's just more than anything, it's for me, being at the StubHub Center, seeing you on that ring, seeing you walk out that day, it was like, it was one of these feelings of, and just like when we see your brother on TV, right? Also like at the Honda Center and stuff like that. It's just like this feeling of like, hey, these young men are a product of where we grew up in Santana.
Yeah.
And for that, we applaud you.
Thank you.
We thank you. We appreciate all you have done because, like you said, you chose this profession.
Yeah.
And in essence, it chose you.
Yeah,
right?
Kind of, I owe that to my uncle, Ramiro Quesada. So I owe that to him because, he did support us and he did take us to the gym. And to this day, I still keep in touch with them. I still hang out with them, so that's one of the things too that I also want to touch base on too is like relationships.
Yeah.
How much does a relationship mean to you? You have to be willing to take and give, for these relationships because at the end of the day, like you said, you want to give back. You always want to give back. I want to give back to my community, and I also want to give back to the people that have helped me out tremendously.
To that uncle. Shout out to him.
Shout out to that
Muchas gracias, tío.
Yeah.
Paul, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm just curious. Now, you've had a couple of boxes on here. What is the local boxing scene like? Is it an active scene? Are they producing lots of high-quality boxers, or do you still have to go to L.A. or someplace else to really get your shot?
Well, in Santa Ana, there's been a lot of great gyms popping out. There's been a lot that are actually competing. They're actually making it to the nationals for those younger guys. So, I'm currently at RTB Boxing, and obviously, like they also have a lot of.
And that's on Florida or something? That's not even here.
No, that one's in Santa Ana. That's my
okay,
promotion.
right.
Yeah, that's
Right.
so that one's here. That's Raw Talent Boxing. That's on Harbor and MacArthur. Still Santa Ana, borderline Costa Mesa. We have a lot of fighters that are actually competing in the amateur circuit.
Nice.
So, and then we got such a great team, Jesus Gutierrez, Jose Hernandez, Eric Duarte, Mario Hernandez too. So, we got a bunch of different coaches, bunch of fighters too. So we're starting from the ground up, but we got the ball going now.
What is it about Orange County that produces so many high caliber athletes?
You got tough kids here.
Is
Paul.
that it?
Because
modern day, the kid Bryce was the Heisman Trophy winner in football, played for Alabama.
I'm gonna let Ronnie answer the question shortly here, but I will tell you this. And Ronnie and I were just talking about this over before the show, and that's Memorial Park.
Yeah.
Memorial Park is a perfect example of where talent is produced. When I was a kid growing up, we played Pop Warner football there. As I got older, I would go to the park to just see what was going on. And the modern day high school football coach would show up every grand opening of the year of football, and he would start picking out the talent that he wanted to go to modern day. And a lot of people don't realize that modern day high school, all those years in football, had very successful years because he would go and he told me that day himself when I asked him, Coach, what brings you here to the Memorial Park?
Yeah.
And he's like, this is where the way he talked, this is where I find all the tough kids right here in Santa Ana. So even though he would go out and find talent in other places, something about Santa Ana kids, the way the city raises you, right? Tough kids. And so how would you answer the boxing situation? Would you say there's a lot of good talent in Santa Ana?
Yeah, there's a lot of tough talent. I guess it's, at least for me, you grow up, I'm not going to say poor, but you grew up struggling. You know? Your mom's working numerous hours to put, your parents are working numerous hours to put jobs. You hardly see them. You see TV, you see all these toys, you see all these places to go eat, and you tell your mom, hey, can we go here? It's like, oh, they don't tell you why, but financially you can't afford that.
Yeah.
And it drives something. It makes you want to work harder. It makes you want to sacrifice more. It's just like growing up, wanting stuff in life. It's very, very difficult. And it makes you change in some way.
For someone like you, now that you're going into that, what was that like for you to go from, hey, I'm this kid from Santa Ana. I come from a working class family, right? Financially, we can only do so much, but now I'm fighting at certain fights that are paying me as a fighter probably what my mom or dad would make in a whole year.
Yeah.
In one fight. What was that like for you? I mean, to kind of explain to your parents and your family.
I mean, it never really crossed your mind. It never really crossed my mind at that time. It wasn't until, like, I'll be honest with you guys, it wasn't until, like, not this last fight, but the previous fight, where I did make good money, and then I retired. I retired. There's just some stuff that happens behind closed doors that, you never want to talk about. It's not that you don't want to talk about, you just want to let it be.
Let it be.
Let it be. Just move on. Leave it in the past and just move on. And I got a job working for this apartment complex called the Avalon. Mm-hmm. They own the Avalon, Eves, Contro, I think. So I was a leasing consultant because I used to do real estate as well too. And I was working there for a good year. And then I was just like, man, I was thinking to myself, I never told anybody, but I was thinking to myself like, man, you would make good money in a month in boxing. Now, you just gotta. I'm not saying you're living paycheck to paycheck, but you're kind of limited to where you can go travel, where you can go eat and stuff like that. And I was just thinking like, damn. And then I wasn't missing boxing at that time when I was retired. I was missing boxing because I was like, man, I got to the world championship, but I couldn't win it twice. And I remember I told my wife, I was like, you know what, babe? I was like, I think I know I can win those belts. And she's like, okay, then go for it. And then this is the one thing that a lot of people don't know. So when I left TKO, right, or whatever you want to say, I wasn't there anymore. I started working at RTB, but I never saw myself coming back to the ring. And I told my wife, I was like, I want to come back to the ring, but I just don't know who would be my coach. And she's like, oh, what about Jesus Gutierrez? They call him Chewy. So I was like, what about Chewy? And then I've told this to Chewy several times. And I was like, well, I don't know if he has experience to get me to that world title. I know he has fighters, but, he's never been to a world title. And my wife was like, okay, your previous gym. I was like, how many world championships did they have there? And I was like, none. Okay, how many Olympians did they have there before you got there? And I was like, none. I was the first one. She's like, okay. She's like, be the first one for this gym too. She's like, go, bust your ass off, and go get it. And I was like, all right. So then I spoke to Chewy. I was like, hey, dude, I want to come back. Would you mind being in my corner? And you and Frank Barajas, he's from San Diego. So he comes like 2-3 times a week, and shout out to Frank Barajas too, because he makes the drive from San Diego. Yeah,
what a sacrifice!
Shout out to Frank Barajas too, man. He's also one of the coaches too. So I spoke to the both of them, got them together. I was like, hey, you know what? Because they never really worked together. They just knew each other. I was like, hey, you guys have to work. Do you guys mind working together so we can make a comeback? And they're like, okay, let's do it. So then we started working out, and I'm not gonna lie to you, the first couple of months was freaking hard coming back. Sparring was terrible for me. Sparring was terrible. I was just like, damn, because I had a job at that time, and I was like, man, this is a lot harder than I remember. I was doing terrible in sparring. And then I was like, there was one time that I sparred and it went so bad. And I went home. I never told anybody. This is a story that I didn't tell anybody till recently. I was thinking to myself, like, you know what, man, I just don't have it anymore. I was like, I think it's time to hang him up. I went home, and then my wife was like, what's wrong? She's like, I can see you're down. And I was like, I don't know, but I didn't do good in sparring. And she said, okay, well, she's like, well, pick it up. You got tomorrow. And I was like, I didn't tell her at that time. I was just like, man, should I just hang him up and just continue doing what I'm doing? And she's like, well, pick him up. And then I slept on it that night. I was like, you know what, man? I was like, I want to win that belt. I was like, I really want, and I'm willing to go through anything. So if I'm willing to go through anything, I have to get over this hump. And I didn't have anybody beating me up at that time. I didn't have anybody telling me all this stuff. So the day went by. I was like, okay. I was like, okay. I remember I told myself, okay, relax. Yesterday was a bad day. Pick yourself up. Go back. So then I did, I started picking it up, and then sparring started going good, then better, then my run started getting better, and I was like, damn. So then, then I reached out to somebody, sure enough, because my contract with Golden Boy had expired for the last fight. And I didn't want to reach out to him, too, because, coming back, I was like, Also, too, there's another person that wasn't there anymore, Robert Diaz. Robert Diaz, he was he was a matchmaker for Golden Boy. He's not there anymore. And I always told Robert Diaz, because me and him are still good friends to this day. He's actually he's my advisor now. I told him, hey, you're not a Golden Boy anymore. It's like, I go wherever you go. But at this time, he was kind of like, he was in between different places. So I reached out to another promoter that I knew. They offered me this fight. I'm like, okay, we'll offer you this fight. We started training for this fight in early October. Things were going good. Things were going great, as a matter of fact. We started training. October 28th, my brother-in-law passed away. Right? And we were getting ready for the fight. I remember this like it was yesterday. We were in bed. It was like 12:43.
Wow.
It was 12:43. Everybody was asleep. My wife, she started, obviously, I heard it on the phone. I was like, wait, what happened? What happened? And she told me. I was like, damn. So then, we went to my mother-in-law's house. Everybody was there. It just felt so unreal. Losing somebody close to you.
I don't want to interrupt you, but what's interesting about your story so far is your wife has played such a huge role in your life during this process. From you kept saying how she kept telling you, keep going, keep doing this.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how suddenly now, that rock of a person suddenly loses her brother.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And now she's down for the count in a way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And now you're like, wow, like my rock is down for the count right now. That's tough, man.
No, that is
right
tough.
Before your fight.
A couple weeks. It was like, so it was October 28th. We were supposed to fight, I want to say December 9th. So we still got like a month and a half. A month and like 2 weeks or something like that. So, my wife and I were like, damn, it felt so unreal. So I was like thinking, man, I can't just leave her at a time like this. And I also felt it too, because my brother-in-law and I were really close. We were close. He kind of became a brother to me.
Sorry to hear that.
I think he became another brother to me. So sure enough, I get the coaches together. I was like, hey guys, like, I'm sorry to say this, but I told them what happened. My coach was like, okay. And I expect them to say like, well, I'm sorry to hear that, but we got to get ready for this fight. But they were the opposite. They're like, okay, take all the time you need. I'll cancel the fight. And I was like, are you sure, dude? Because I don't want to like look bad with the promoters. Like, hey, don't worry about it, bro. I was like, your family comes first. Go take care of your family. And I was like, okay. And I was like, because honestly, I wouldn't be able to perform to my best because, like I said,
mentally.
to this day, I was actually thinking about him this morning.
Yeah.
So, the fight was off, and then keep in mind, I had quit my job prior to that. So the money that was told that, you'll get a little signing bonus to help you out, never came through. So obviously, my wife is the only one working at this point. I have no money coming in. I had to, do all kinds of stuff, with the house and stuff like that. And sure enough, finally, I meet with Roberto Diaz again. And I was like, hey, it's not about the money, but I want to come back, And I also told him, like, I'm struggling a little bit, but I'm not doing this for the money. I'm doing this to win a world. But so we sat down, we met. He was like, okay. I was like, I'll help you out. I was like, give me some time. So then, sure enough, he comes back and says, hey, I got somebody with you. Good promoter. They're good promotional company. They're up and coming. I really like how they do it. I got this date. I got this. And I was like, okay, I'll take it. This is by February already. We started training for it. Sure enough, we go out there. Everything was good. I performed good. But my point of the story is you never lose trust in yourself. Never lose faith in yourself. There will be times when you do lose faith in yourself, but then you got people. I have friends, my wife, that have helped me out tremendously. Because mentally, to me, it's harder to be mentally vulnerable than to be obviously physical vulnerable, because your mind will play tricks on you. Your mind casts doubt on your abilities, and you will bring yourself down. And if you don't, then you got other people that will bring you down.
Wow. I think that's something that for those of you listening or watching, when you do decide to retire, I think you're going to play such a huge role in mentoring other boxers on how the importance of not physically only being in shape, right? Yeah. But mentally being strong. Yeah. I mean, because I've heard you say this at least 4 times since you walked into the studio today, how the mental capacity plays such a huge role
Yeah.
in your career, right?
Of
Because
course.
so many times you face those challenges as far as, that doubt, that, it's tough times mentally right now. What's next for you? What is the goal? I mean, I know you want to win the big championships, so you're taking some time off because you just won this other fight, right?
I wanted to come back in July.
Okay.
But I suffered a little wrist injury in the fight.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's nothing serious.
You
but
got to
it's
take it
just-
easy,
I
let
gotta
it
take
heal.
I can't hit anything for like at least a month.
Okay.
So I'm still at the gym. But yeah, my goal has always been and continues to be to bring back a world champion to Santa Ana. Like I said, I don't want to just fight for it. I want to bring it back home. I want to say, we did history. So that's my goal.
That is awesome. And we want to wish you all the best and obviously give a lot of credit to all those that have been supporting you, from your wife to obviously people like Mary Lara at TKO Boxing to now RTB, right? Raw Boxing Talent. Thank you for, obviously supporting you and what you're doing and all those gentlemen that you mentioned.
Like I said, there's a lot of stuff that happens behind closed doors. I also got a lot of help before and to this day from the Esparza family. That being Ron Esparza, Marcelo Esparza, Bobby, and obviously Celeste. Like, they've helped me out tremendously in the past to this day. I wouldn't be able to go into this last fight without their help 100%, like I was mentally and physically, because they helped me out. This fight really opened up a lot of sponsorship opportunities, and that really helped me out financially to get ready for this fight, so I can focus more on the fight instead of doing like little side jobs here and there.
Well, shout out to all your sponsors.
Thank you.
Because without them, like you said, you wouldn't be able to do what you're doing. At the end of the day, you represent a part of the heart of Santa Ana and who we are. I can tell you firsthand, watching you fight at the StubHub, I had not ever been to a boxing fight in my life.
Yeah.
That was my first time ever at a boxing fight. So to be at a boxing fight watching somebody that I know, as a fan, yes, it's exciting, but it's also nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
Because you know that person, and obviously you wish nothing but the best and that you don't get hurt.
Especially in health, yeah.
Yeah, right. And so obviously to see you win that fight and be successful, and just the way the crowd and a lot of us from Santa Ana were there, it was an experience like no other.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you for bringing that to us in Santa Ana, and to obviously hopefully other people in Orange County that follow you and your brother, Alexis.
Yeah.
Because like you said, this is something that seems to me like you love, right?
Yeah.
This is your passion.
Yeah, and this has been a passion that's been burning for a while. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes you do lose that passion for whatever reason, but that's the thing about passion. It comes back, and sometimes.
But that's in every industry, every industry. You could be in every job, every industry. You go through those highs and lows, right?
Yeah.
You go through the times where you're tired, you're burned out, and you take a break, and then you kind of energize the batteries, and then you're like, okay, let's go at it again, right?
Yeah.
But more importantly, the fact that you've continued to come back, even though you've had some challenges and some tough times, says a lot about you.
Yeah. Thank you.
And says a lot also about your wife. Shout outs to her, and let's continue to thank her. Yes, Mr. Paul Roberts.
Just want to thank him for being so honest and open, because it's hard to talk. It's easy to talk about the wins. It's hard to talk about the tough times, and that's where we all learn.
Yeah.
Like they always say, you don't really get to know a person or know about a person until you hear like the goods and the bads.
Yeah, when you're down, that's when you really got to decide what you're made of here.
Yeah. That's when you're gonna really. That's when you're really gonna test yourself, whether you can wake up in the morning, go do it over and over and over again, even if you have a bad day or you have a few bad days in a row. Can you get up and do it? And you really gotta ask yourself, and it's not just in boxing; it's in business, it's in life, it's in everything. You gotta ask yourself. This is what I asked myself when I came prior to come back. Can I do it? And you gotta be 100% with yourself. Can I do it? And if you gotta ask yourself, are you willing to do the sacrifice? Are you willing to put in the work? Whether it's odd hours, whether it's something different than you're not used to. And that's one of the things that I really liked about RTB is they really, really pushed you, or they pushed me. like all these hard runs. They took us out to Mount Baldy. They took us out to Peters Canyon. We had done that in the past, but this was competitive. Like, like you're tired. And I told Coach Hernandez a couple of times, like, oh man, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make it. I'm tired. And I remember he told me, he's like, oh, that's just an excuse. If you don't want it, cool, stay home. And I was like, damn. And it gets you kind of mad, like, oh man, like, I've done, this and this, like, and then you're like, oh, you know what, he's right. And it's easy to get mad at somebody else for trying to push you. But at the end of the day, it's up to you. You got to push yourself. You can't have other people pushing you, other people wanting it more than you,
Well, we got to wrap it up. I'm sorry that time has gone by so fast. Ronny, thank you for being on our show. And I know we're going to have you back because you're also looking at
when he wins the world championship.
Yes, that and plus I hear he wants to start a business.
Yeah,
we'll talk about that next time when you're on the show. Please do come back. We wish you all the best. We wish you all success. And, please send our best to your wife. I'm sorry about the loss of your brother-in-law. Maybe now you're fighting in his spirit, in his memory.
Trunks. J-Bone.
Right?
I had it in the back.
There you go, right? And, shout outs to him and his memory. And, and not only that, continue all success. Your brother Alexis, wish him all the best and all he's doing. And thank you for making us so proud, of all you done in Santana, representing us really well. And stay tuned, folks. Follow him on social media, Mr. Ronny Rios. You're going to see him coming back and winning the championship and again, representing us in Santa Ana. Thank you all for tuning in again to our community podcast show powered by the Orange County Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Wish you all the best, Ronny. Take care, brother. Take it away, Mr. Paul Roberts.
Wow. Well, there you have it. If that doesn't bring you back for more, I don't know what will. Real people telling real stories of what it's really doing here in our community. Powered by the Orange County Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio. Streaming live from our studios here at the University of California, Irvine's Beale Applied Innovation Center.